And I can't wait to tell you about some of the cars that I dug up on here. I mean, I'm looking at one right now and I'm like, I want this so bad.
Is it the Jaguar? The Jaguar that was.
Oh, behave.
Welcome back to Car-Pinionated, our weekly show on cars, the car industry, and driving in general. I'm Doug Stewart, digital executive producer for Fox 61 in Hartford. This is Jeff Buckholz from WBBM in Chicago, writer and editor there, and a car enthusiast, and Glenn Packman, who is a Fairfield County resident and an improv comedian and a car enthusiast. Gentlemen, um, going, gone is probably going to be the title of this this episode here. We're going to be talking about auctions and auctions in person and auctions online, and the whole kind of ethos of buying your car online now. So, Glenn, do you want to talk a little bit about where which first off, Glenn, would you buy a car on an online auction?
Well, I'm new to the whole auction thing. I got to be honest, until we brought it up as a subject, I'd never really like dabbled. And now I want to go to all the auction websites and just look and look and look and look because it's very cool. In terms of buying a car online, I think I just did in August actually because we were looking for a new car and we found something with an online special and we literally went through the internet, got the car we wanted and had the deal completely ironed out. So technically, I guess yeah, I have no problem
Yeah.
with an online car. When you're talking about a used car and something classic, ooh, I don't know about that. I have no experience in that, and I would be the dummy that would go, "Oh yeah, sure, let's just do this," and then I end up with something that could be problematic. That being said, I am overwhelmed at some of the absolute buttes that you can find on some of these websites. I didn't even know. It was like the veil has been pulled away, and I was like, so I'm being a little dramatic, but really, I was like, holy, I focused on bringatrailer.com, and there are at least a dozen cars that I would seriously consider just having a third vehicle and building a secondary garage and just, throwing away the money to have. So I guess I would have to say, yeah, I someday I might be willing to try this. I know that there are mechanics who you can hire out in certain areas to go
Right.
and check a car. We sold a car on Craigslist actually to someone from Vermont who had hired somebody locally to come over and actually take a look at the car, and it all went fine. It was the car she was looking for, and she came all the way down from Vermont for it. So that was an Audi A3, by the way, great little car. And I'm glad that she found it and she was happy with it, and it, ran like a top. And the mechanic was like, "This is a great car."
Yeah.
She did
Yeah.
great. So maybe if I took those steps, yeah. But now I'm worried that one of these days I'm just going to take these steps, and my partner is going to be very irritated with me for doing this. So, but yeah, that's my experience. And I can't wait to tell you about some of the cars that I dug up on here. I mean, I'm looking at one right now and I'm like, I want this so bad.
Is it the Jaguar? The Jaguar that was.
Oh, behave.
No,
Behave.
seriously, it's the Jaguar that they used in the Austin Powers movies
Oh,
is
really?
on one of these sites, and it's like
Okay,
only one, and it's like they documented it. Yeah, yeah. I
great.
can see you motoring about Fairfield County in this Jaguar.
There you go.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. The one that totally caught my eye, and this is from uh, a point in my past where I just couldn't afford anything but basic transportation, and this wasn't. There is a 1983 Toyota Celica Supra 5-speed on here that is in pristine condition. And to this day, what a gorgeous car. I
Yeah.
mean, it was the car that I pined over in 1983 and would never be able to afford. It is just it is immaculate and a beautiful car, and they want $15,000 for it. And I'm like, could I? No, no, not if I want to stay married, right?
Glenn, thank you. Jeff, what do you think about online auctions? And you've had experience with both, right?
I have, yeah. I've attended a number of in-person collector car auctions, dating back to the days of the old cruise auctions in Auburn, Indiana, that I used to go to with my dad. Actually, may he rest in his ultimately unsuccessful quest to buy a C5 Corvette. Um, but I've been to your sort of uh wholesaler by the side of the road auction where you buy somebody's clapped out Ford Tempo for $400 up to one of the really high-end auctions in Scottsdale, Arizona. Gooding's not there this year, but when Gooding and Company was there, I saw the auctioneer there hammer a Ferrari for $7.5 million. Um, which was crazy. It set a record for that particular model of Ferrari, and it was, of course, beautiful. And there were cars that I saw at that auction, an unrestored, original paint uh, Mercedes Gullwing SL, which sold for $1,050,000. Because it's only original once, folks.
Right, right,
And everything in between, like everybody, I think now now that a lot of these auction companies, the Mecum auction is a really popular one. Barrett Jackson's kind of the granddaddy of your sort of collector car, muscle car auctions. Barrett Jackson takes over Scottsdale around the King holiday weekend. Um, the Mecum folks do auctions all over the country, but their big one, the marquee auction, is in Kissimmee, which is outside of Orlando, where they take over the fairgrounds there for 2 solid weeks in
right,
January.
right.
And I've been to that. I've been to several days of that auction. Ran into Rain Carini there once. And there's everything from, there are those auctions. There are your Copart auctions where, this company is set up to sell off cars that are sort of on the way to the scrap yard, like they've been an insurance company may have totaled it, but it doesn't have a ton of damage, and you can buy it and fix it up if you want. If grandma suddenly can't drive her Corolla anymore, and the family decides to donate it to the local public radio station, it might wind up there on an auction. Or the various and sundry government surplus auctions, which is kind of how I first became aware of these things back in the day when the General Services Administration and other government agencies would sell off the cars and Jeeps and trucks that they didn't need anymore. And now there are a lot of companies that will do that. And, if you are really looking for a deal on a P71 Crown Victoria, there are plenty of sites for you to find that. All of them have one thing in common. They are all terrible venues to buy cars. There's a few reasons for that. First of all, um, because of the excitement of an in-person auction and even an online auction where, all of the action happens in the last 5 minutes before the auction closes on eBay or whatever, um, you are very susceptible to paying entirely too much money for a car. Particularly and yeah, that you can get wrapped up in this in an online auction where you're checking your eBay listing and, oh crap, somebody outbid me, I gotta outbid them, and on it goes. And then what have I done? I've paid $30,000 for a Sentra. But it is even more difficult to resist the temptation when you are in person and the car is up on the podium and it looks
Right.
fantastic, and there's a guy yelling at you from the podium with a microphone, and you've got three guys over there who are raising their paddles, and you've got someone from the auction company in your face going, "You're going to let them do you like this?" And so you end up buying even if you're, let's just say you're going to go buy a C3 Corvette at an auction, there are 8 C3s up for bid that day, but you wind up buying the first one and paying too much money for it because you just can't help yourself. And
Yeah.
also, in most cases, your inspection of the car pre-auction is limited to walking around it
Right.
and hearing it
Yeah.
run. Now, they may say that GTO has had a frame off restoration. Do you really know? Like, you don't really. I mean, you can look at the Pontiac Historical Services document. You can look at some of the whatever documentation they have. You can hear it run. You can walk around it, but you don't really know until you get it home what you've actually bought. It isn't like you can say, "Oh, I'd really love to bid on that Mustang, but I'd like to run it to my mechanic down the block. Is that
Right.
okay?"
Right. Drive it.
Um,
Actually drive it. Yeah.
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't even really drive it. Um, and a lot of other auctions are the same way, unfortunately. And that is, the sort of a lot of people really aren't all that concerned about the buyer bewareness of the whole thing, which is why there are so many auction sites now. eBay doesn't have all the fun anymore. We've talked about the in-person auction houses all having sites. We all know about Bring a Trailer. Barn Finds now has auctions.
Yeah.
Cars and Bids, which is Doug
Cars and
DeMuro's
bids.
operation, that he built based on his profile as a car guy.
Hmm.
Which adds a level of prestige and provenance to the stuff that is offered on his site. I mean, there are so many ways to part with your money through those sites. It is, unless you have a really specific idea of what you want, a specific budget with which you want to work, some working knowledge of the cars, or someone who can give you that knowledge, either by coming to the auction with you or, however, diagnosing it in other ways. Um, there are many better ways of buying, whether it's a project car, a classic car, something for the kid to drive, whatever.
I think one of the
But
interesting things that,
I'm sorry, I
oh,
must say this.
oh,
They are, even though they're terrible places to buy cars, they are super fun.
Yeah.
yeah,
They are a
yeah,
riot. I've been to, I can't even tell you, probably a half a dozen Mecum auctions, Barrett Jackson, Gooding and Company, the old cruise auctions. I've been to a bunch of car auctions, and they're a riot. They are so fun. Just looking at the cars is a riot.
yeah, yeah. That's my experience more recently was Barrett Jackson at Mohegan Sun, the big casino here in Southeast Connecticut, one of the two big casinos in Southeast Connecticut. And they had, the auction itself, but people had their cars in the parking garage there, selling them outside of the auction thing. The thing I was going to say is, and me as, somebody, and Jeff, I'm sure you know this, is that that all the subtle things that you don't think about, we see as television people, how they're lit, how they're staged, how all that stuff comes about. And all those pieces are there to work what you're saying, Jeff. It's not the guy in your face, but God, it looks beautiful up there. It's just, it's a really beautiful light. It's like going to the grocery store, and the good grocery stores are lit really, really well, Um, and the other piece of them, so it's not just the cars or the trucks or the SUV or the motorcycles. It's the memorabilia, it's the signs, it's the brochures, it's the the parts and all that other stuff that goes in Barrett Jackson, the ones that they had down here that I used to see. My first experience with the auction was um not far from here, up in East Windsor, there's a Southern Auto Auction, and when I worked for the car rental company, we'd be up there and selling or buying cars. The car rental industry is basically a way to manufacture used cars, and we bring bunch of cars up to the auction, and sometimes we buy stuff, and they were just running them through every Wednesday. They had all these cars that are running through, and it's a huge. I'll put up a Google Earth of the facility now, which is like triple the size that it was when I was there in the early 80s. The interesting story to that is that following World War II, when cars were so difficult to get and used cars were difficult to get, that these guys started an auction there for essentially the Northeast. And that's where they were selling used cars, and people could bring them and sell them or buy them or whatever they needed to do. And that's their business that they've, gone, now close to 80 years, I suppose. It started in 1947. Anyway, that's it, it's interesting, and you see just these lots and lots and lots of cars out there. But it's an interesting process to go through, especially if you could just watch and observe, right? If
Mhm.
just see this process going on. What Glenn was saying about going to the online sites, like, yes, I can click and look at every single Mustang that they have on those, and I can get my 67s in one pile and my 2006s in one pile, and I am a happy camper to look at those, and, then I can, go on my merry way, I think of a lot of these places, I'm pretty sure that Cars and Bids has this, I assume other places, that if it goes south and it doesn't work out the way you want it, there's mediation, and they're going to step in and, sort of figure out, because, they have the auction place has a reputation to protect as well,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, and they're
Um,
also, I mean, and they're making, I forget what, I mean, every auction company charges a different fee. That's the other reason, by the way, that buying a car at an auction is often not a great proposition, because the auction company is taking a pretty sizable percentage of the purchase price
yeah,
off the
off the
top.
top. Yeah,
And if when you watch like the Mecum auction, and I've seen them do this, you hear the like Dana Mecum and those people like with the seller or with the buyer like trying to negotiate, okay, what if we take X amount instead of Y amount? What if we lower our percentage and you can raise your bid, and how does this work, and can we make this happen? Um, a lot of times that's not negotiable. And remember too that when you're buying a car at auction, in most cases, you already have to have the money. It's not like you
right,
bid on the
right,
car, sold, you get the charger. Oh, good. Now I'm going to go to the bank and get financing. Like, you got to have the money.
right.
You can walk in there
Yep.
pre-approved, but there's very little,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not
What
like,
we used to do, we used run up the check. There was a check that had to. I feel like it could be up there the next day. Maybe I'm wrong. It's
mhm.
a while ago, but they were not. It wasn't like, oh well, I'll just take the car now and I'll.
Yeah. Yeah, you do have a period of time, a period of days in which to complete the purchase. And I think you're right. I think it's like 1 to 2 days, depending on how long the auction is.
Uh,
Um, but there are a number of cars where they don't complete the deal, and the cars end up going back into the auction cycle and wind up, getting auctioned in a different city.
yeah.
I,
So
I,
go ahead. Go ahead.
just coming from my position of naivete here, never even thought about the difference between just an online purchase, like I mentioned, Craigslist, and then an auction. And Thank you for opening my eyes to that, because you make a really, really good point about the pressure of an auction
Mhm.
as opposed to just purchasing something online. You
Mhm.
know, imagine if you went into Amazon and they were like, "Oh, you need this box of cough drops? Well, you can get it for 29 cents. If you buy it now, buy it now. No, it gone up 30. No, it's, and then you get into that, I did it myself on in the early days of eBay, much to my dismay.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. I mean, like
Hmm.
I spent like probably like $60 on a rare CD. For those kids out there who don't know what a CD is, that's compact. It's what we used to put music on. Okay, but yeah, and I completely lost track of that. So, and I think
Ooh.
there you go. There's that. It's a testament to how well these sites are designed, in that I went in for the first time and I'm like, I'm already set to buy a car without thinking about all the, and and I even said, oh, I'll get a mechanic and have it checked out. Silly, naive, just no. Yeah. So, but I'm still looking at these cars, aren't I? I'm
And
still,
and there are, if you decide, you know what, I like this atmosphere, I like a specific car at an auction. Like you can, I think there are ways to do it where where it's not a terrible proposition, or you're willing to kind of deal with the the fact that you might find a better deal on a car somewhere else. I mean, ultimately, if it's the car you want,
Right,
cars aren't rational purchases, right? Especially not if they're like collector cars.
right.
right.
Um, my key would be one of my keys would be looking for, if you're going for a collector car, to look at a day, if this is possible, that isn't like a big weekend day. Like
Mhm.
there are more sort of amateurs and looky-loos ready to drive up a price at like a Saturday, like a Friday or a Saturday auction. Like when I was doing research for this segment, I was looking at the some of the Meekum stuff, and I was looking at cars that were being auctioned on a Tuesday,
I,
because it's
I get that. Yeah.
they've got 10 C3 Corvettes up on that Tuesday. I don't need to wait till Friday to
Right.
get the C3 I want, let's just say.
Yeah.
There's likely to be less competition, there's likely to be less sort of pressure to jack up the price, and a lot of those cars um on those off days are selling no reserve,
Mhm.
which means they're not trying to get a number.
Right.
And they're going to sell it.
Yeah.
And
Which I
also,
think,
I mean, go ahead.
no, you go ahead, Finch.
No, um, and a lot of times what you will find on those off days is you will find cars that are basically used cars. Like they're not
Yeah.
classics, they're not special, they're not anything. Like here, there's an example of a car that I saw that's being auctioned, um, a 91 Benz SL 500. Nothing special. It's red. It's in decent shape. It's not so new or so old that it's like a classic. Like it's
Right.
a,
Right. That sweet
like it's
spot.
like it's an R107, or, a Pagoda or something like that. Um, it's a used car. It'll probably sell for $12,000.
Right. Right.
It's great. It's one of the last really good Mercedes Benzes,
It's a great color.
right? Yeah. There, and
Less,
the same day you could buy a 97 Riviera.
yeah.
It'll probably sell for 5 grand. It's
Yeah.
supercharged. That's cool. It's the last year it's one of the last years of the Riv. That's cool, but it's not special. And that's where, that's the kind of thing that you can find sort of on the off-peak days. Whereas a peak day, it's Plymouth Superbird after Olds 442 after, Charger Daytona after Mustang 429, and on and on, and 57 Chevy. Oh my God, don't get me started on the Tri-5 Chevys. Um, all those winga-dinga cars. I mean, yeah, they're lousy with it.
I stumble upon these cars that were like watershed cars for me when I was younger, and it's great to look at. I don't know if I ever want to own one, but boy, it's nice to fantasize, at
Yeah.
these beautiful,
Uh,
beautiful cars that I just couldn't afford back then. Eh, I need to find an inflation adjuster because I found what my Celica sold for new. So let me see if I can look this up real quickly. Inflation calculator. All right, bear with me.
In the meantime, as you look up, I've also found an auction car specifically for Doug. Um, that would be the 1990 Chevrolet Caprice Estate Wagon in Rosewood, which is also being offered at Meekum and Kissimmee. And then the sort of
Oh, yeah.
wacky out of left field car, the 77 Chevy Monza Mirage, the one
Oh,
year only special edition of that car, with ironically the same engine as the Caprice wagon has, the 305, the 5-liter Chevy V8, which is a heavily detuned small block Chevy, but it's the same dimension, so perfect for your crate engine swap or pulling an LS engine out of a rusted out truck, of which there are legion in the Northeast.
Regis, right. Now, is in the Monza, is that the one you have to take the engine out to change the spark plugs?
Yes, yes, because they had so it was the Monza was initially designed to carry a rotary engine because
Right.
GM was sort of disappearing down that rabbit hole for a minute. But they realized after years of testing that they could never get the economy they wanted out of it. So instead, they had a sporty coupe with a relatively giant engine compartment that while it wasn't ever going to hold a rotary engine, by God, it held a small block Chevy not badly. So yeah, so
A
that's
nice
why you
looking.
wound up with V8s in them, and in fact the Buick version, the Skyhawk, came standard with the 3.8, um, which is one of the Buick legendary engines of all time.
In, I'm going to encapsulate a long story here just with brackets and then go on to the fact that there was for a brief time in my life I drove a uh, I forget the year, but it was a Buick Skyhawk T-type with a turbo four
Those are
cylinder,
so
and
good, dude.
yeah, it was a
Those were
it was
great.
it was great. It was a lot of fun. Shortly after I stopped driving it, like the front end fell out in a dramatic fashion because of bad things going on. But yeah, it was a lot of fun when I drove it. So
Those were great. The Sunbird also had that turbo engine available. And it was, boy, that turned that car into a rocket.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, it was like 150, 160 horsepower, I think, which is, I mean, not very much in a 2024 sense, but kids in the 80s, in the Malaise era,
yeah.
160 was a lot.
Yes,
You know what? Here's the thing that, going off on another tangent here. So one of my all-time favorite cars is the car I had um, gotten, again, I'm talking about the car rental company, but I got a Chrysler LeBaron GTS Turbo.
Mm.
We buy 50 Chryslers in a year, and you got one free demonstrator for a year, right? And this was gunmetal, had a light gray interior, so just a great car. I happened to catch on Motor Week on YouTube the test of that car.
Oh,
And I was like, and I'm like, okay, so I don't know. One of the things that I find hilarious is, and the 0 60 to time was 12 seconds. Like, but this thing, I will put up here the number it was because I'll go back and look, but it was sub 10. I think it was 8. I think it
mhm.
was 8 second 0 to 60. Like, okay, I feel justified in having that be one of my favorite cars.
And to follow on that tangent, my God, John Davis is a national treasure, isn't he? I cannot believe that man is still doing that
Still
show 40
going.
years in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Bless his heart, man.
Yeah.
That's really something.
Yeah. Glenn, did you have cars that you were looking at?
I did follow up on the Supra that I'm salivating over. They had the original window sticker on it, and the car sold for 16,553 back in 1983. Adjusted for inflation, that's $53,400, and that seems about right for a car like that, you know. And most of all, I could almost afford that. So
The Supra of that era was really a competitor to the Z28 Camaro
Yes.
and the
Yeah.
Mustang GT. And a Mustang GT now is about $50,000. I mean, once you get the V8 on it and everything else.
Mhm.
And I will say this, Glenn, if you are honestly thinking about buying that Supra, and I think you should, it's never going to be less expensive than it is right now.
That's a good point.
Those
Yeah.
cars are as all of the original Supras and a lot of the like late 70s, early 80s, the Calty design Celicas and Supras that I love have all kind of rusted away to nothing. And a lot of the third gen Celica / second gen Supras have also rusted away. And as we're getting older, the cars that we loved when we were younger are starting to appreciate in value. So if that's a good car and your spouse can be persuaded, it's cars are terrible investments. That car is
Yeah.
never going to be less expensive than it is right now.
true. And we could use a station car. So unfortunately, my husband drives down to the station right now too, and it will be 3 days a week starting in a couple months, meaning that we're short a car 2 or 3 days a week. So we could always use
Oh,
something,
sure.
not exactly the definition of beater, but
I am enjoying the rationalization going on here.
there
I
you go.
heartily endorse it.
Thank you. They
we,
have
so we give our blessing, Glenn.
right. To be completely fair, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to hold out for my very first crush car, which I've talked about on here numerous times, and that would be a '73 Mercury Capri, from
Yep.
Germany. That's the car that I would finally cave and buy and do this. So much to the dismay of everybody I know, but I don't care, But they don't have one on the website, but they do have some.
Thank God, because you'd be buying it right now.
Yeah. They have a 2000 Corvette with only 32,000 miles on it. That is a gorgeous car. There's a '67 Mini Cooper, the little Mini Cooper, like the one in Four Weddings.
The original Italian Job.
The Italian Job,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, exactly. The original. That would be so much fun. So I a friend of mine who I went to college with, her hand-me-down car was one of Honda's, even smaller than a Mini car. It had a motorcycle engine under the hood.
Is this
Really?
the 600? Is this the
Yes.
N600? Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
canary
It was
yellow.
pre-Civic. It was pre-Civic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Way
Had
pre-Civic.
the big rubber thing around the rear window, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. It was minusculely. It was so small
It was
that
tiny.
people came running to see it. They wanted to see if the clowns were going to start piling out. I'm serious. It was just so tiny. And the noise of this car was unbelievable. It was a motorcycle engine under the hood powering this car. So it wasn't exactly peppy, but boy, I mean, it was fun. So, but yeah, I could spend all night looking at these cars and salivating, and that's kind of a bad thing. But so, thank you thank
You
You should go. No, you should go. You should go to an auction. Don't get a paddle. Don't get a bidder number.
No.
Don't.
No.
Just go.
I don't trust myself.
Go grab an auction like a lot list. And I've done that a lot where I'll just grab a list of the cars that are being auctioned. I'll make note of what they sell for and whether I think that's a decent deal or I think it's garbage. Sometimes you'll get, something will go for less than you think.
Yeah.
It's just, and you're just kind of doing research then.
Yeah. That sounds like a homework assignment to me. I would gladly do.
I keep going back to here's what I like cars and bids. There's an 85 Land Cruiser there that I could see
Ah.
myself driving.
Oh my God. An FJ60? I love those. Those are
There you go,
so
62.
good.
It's a Middle East market, it's FJ 62.
Oh, okay.
Um, there is and my favorite X5, the second generation.
Hmm.
Um, there's another one. There's a 2007, and of course any number of Mustangs. But this 2007 BMW X5, 4.8 liter I injected engine. I suppose God, that's the thing that stops me from wanting to actually buy one of those is because I don't know how many times I've been behind one at a stoplight and they start up and then there's this puff of gas, puff of smoke,
Yeah.
like habemus papum, we have a pope, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. That's gonna happen.
you know, but yeah, you could spend a lot of money at these things,
Hmm.
imaginary money,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
all
Uh,
right, we're going to bring this to a close, gentlemen. Happy virtual auto shopping. Uh, but remember that you can watch older episodes of Car-Pinionated because we have a lot of fun, and you can see it on our YouTube playlist. Like and subscribe, and with that, we will see you next time.